Good morning. Today is the 6th of December, 1974. 52 years ago, it was a momentous day in my life. We were tasked with Air America to fly down to Pak Se in a C-123K and airdrop to two fire bases that were harassing the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This I knew was going to be a dangerous operation because a few weeks prior to that, a caribou had been shot down in that area with the loss of the entire crew. My crew was Bill Carruthers as a co-pilot, Sampop, my Thai kicker, and Booma, another Thai kicker. When we got to Pak Se, the helicopters were going into these fire bases we were going to drop at, and they were kind of antsy about this. They weren't taking any fire, surprisingly, which was kind of amazing. But the rumor had it that the gunners were waiting for big aircraft to shoot down. And I feel the bottom line of that was really true. The next day, we were loaded with small arms ammunition, claymore mines, hand grenades, things like that, that were all frontline expendables. So that meant the enemy was very close to this site. The first site I went into, I checked with the helicopters that had gone in before me, and they came out with wounded, and which meant the enemy was nearby, obviously, and asked them to throw smoke out in the area where they wanted the load dropped. And went in and made a couple passes at this, and this worked fine. Okay, well, the next site was only about 15 miles away. So rather than climb up and let back down again, I told the Sampop and Booma, my load masters in the back, leave the back end open and rig for a drop. We're going to make one pass, drop, and go home. And as I got up to the site, the customer came on the radio on the ground and said, Big Bird, get out of here, AAA, AAA. Well, AAA comes in a lot of different flavors, which I'd seen before. The enemy had quad-barreled 50 calibers. Their tracers were green. Now, the next step up the ladder was 23 millimeter, which was a white hot round that seemed to float up at you, but it was an explosive round. And then you got into the major leagues of 37 millimeter and 57 millimeter rounds, and they were red balls that come floating up at you. Well, I didn't see anything, but I poured the power to her and brought the jets up to 100% and told the guys in the back, close it up and hang on. And I jinked on the way out, just to throw the gunners off if they were trying to hit me. But I didn't see anything. And when I got clear of the area, I asked Sampop in the back over the intercom, did you guys see anything? Yes, Captain. Red balls went by the tail. Okay, they weren't leading me enough, so that's a good idea. But it wasn't particularly a good thing for the poor guys in the back. If they didn't lead far enough up to get the cockpit, they'd get them in the back of the airplane. But went back to Pak Se and landed there and went into the shack there that the CIA customers had. And there was two agents there, codenamed Gray Fox and Tall Man. Gray Fox had gray hair, and I'd worked with him before, and he was a pretty good guy. But Tall Man was in charge of these bases that I just tried to drop at. And he was new. And I told him, we went out of there because your guy on the ground called AAA, get out of there. And he said, oh, no, there's no big guns there. I said, well, how about you go out and talk to my guys in the back of the bus? They saw red balls going by the tail. Okay. He capitulated and said, I'll have a team sweep the area for a gun. And I said, okay, I'll be out at the airplane Let me know when it's all clear. And about a half an hour later, he came out and he says, oh yeah, they sent a patrol out and there was nothing there. And I said, okay. I knew he was lying to me, but I said, I'll go back, but I want some of the Air America H-34 standing by in case I have a problem. And also, I'd like some fighter cover if you can manage that. Get some of the T-28s out of Thailand to come over and give me high cover. And he grumbled about that, but I said, fine. And he says, when the choppers take off, you can go ahead and follow them and wait till they clear the area, and then you can go in and drop. Okay. Well, the choppers took off, and I took off right behind them and got on top of a low scattered cloud deck and listened to them going in and out of the site. And when one finally called clear of the site I was going to drop at, I told the chopper, tell the guy on the ground there to start throwing a smoke grenade out where he wants the load dropped. And keep throwing them. I want a big bubble of smoke coming up. And he called clear, and I took and punched it right down to the top of the jungle canopy. And down that low and fast over the trees, it's pretty hard to swing a gun barrel fast enough to lead you to hit you. So I figured I got these guys fooled already, and got within about a half a mile of the drop zone. And they pulled up about 400 feet so the chutes would have time to deploy, and they nailed me. First thing I lost was my ailerons. Those are those things out on the wing that make it go like that. And it started to roll to the left into the jungle. To stop the roll, I pulled the power completely off the right side, and I had my foot buried in the rudder. The yoke was useless. It was just turning uselessly in my hand. The cables had been cut or something. And it slowly came back and was shuddering like hell on the top of the jungle as we staggered out of there. I told the guys in the back, close it up and hang on. I'm going to get out of here. One of the choppers called and said, you're trailing fluid. Well, I could see by the fuel gauge a 700-gallon tank on the right side was rapidly going down to zero. So that's where the fluid was. It was the fuel coming out of the hole in the tank. I wasn't worried about it blowing up because we had these tanks foamed. And if flame would come up, it would come up to the side and not blow the wing off. But that still did not give me a lot of tingly feeling about the whole situation. Now, with a reduced fuel load on board, it was going to be doubtful if I could get back to Pak Se. Plus, the control problems trying to land it would be a mess. There was an old Japanese airstrip about 15 miles away, and I headed for that. This area was neither good guys or bad guys. It wasn't being contested at all. Runway had been overgrown with elephant grass, and if I tried to put it down there, it might be okay. But I figured the next thing is going to be get out and go for a walk, bail out of this thing. And as I approached that, I told the co-pilot, you go in the back with the rest of them. When I ring the bell, you guys jump, and I'll be right behind you. And he did. He went into the back, and I was about ready to ring the bell, and Sompop came on the internet. He'd get away from us. And he climbed up the ladder into the cockpit. He wanted his survival vest. Well, I let him take it, and he went down to the cabin. I told Sompop to take it away from him, throw it out the door. If he tries to put that on, it's going to cover up the back of his parachute, and it won't open. And maybe I should have done that, but I didn't. And next pass, lined up again, and she's shaking like hell, and some of the noise stopped. Something came off out there. both ailerons were in a full up position. It wasn't an aileron that came off, but there was a lot of damage to the tail, so a piece of metal must have came off. And about to ring the bell again, and Tom Pop, he get away from us. And he came up the ladder. He wanted his camera. Well, he bought a Nikon camera, which is state-of-the-art thing back in those days. And he grabbed that, and that's how he got a scar on his forehead from me backhanding him. He fell back down the ladder, and I knew he couldn't hang on to that damn thing when he exited the airplane, so never mind. I said, I don't care what you guys do back there this time. Get him out. If you got to throw him out, go ahead. Do that. And they rogered that and lined her up again. And she's really getting raggedy on me. And rang the bell, and I looked back down through the cabin and watched them back there. And Booma, the one tie kicker, he went. Okay. Now, Bill, the co-pilot, he leaned out the door a little bit to see if his parachute opened, and at that time, Sampop took him out. And Sampop at that time, I think he saved my life. But there was a little after story to that whole thing. He'd never jumped parachute before. I had done some sport jumping. And of course, Sampop was a paratrooper, and he was well versed in the thing. In John Wayne movies and things like that, you see the guys come in, take that D-ring and go like that. Well, that's good for the movies, but there's a cable in a metal conduit going over your shoulder back there to the pins in the chute. And if that cable gets kinked a little bit in that conduit, it's hard to pull. What you want to do is come in with both hands and strip it straight down. It takes the pins out and it deploys immediately. But he struggled with that for a while and obviously ruined his underwear. But I'm now all alone in an empty airplane. And I turned her around again and locked the controls, shut the right engine down and the right jet down, so there was just a lot of flat plate drag out there, so this thing wouldn't start rolling when I exited the cockpit. Down the ladder, grabbed the static line so I didn't fall down and break a leg on the way back. Got to the troop door on the right side and swung out. And sound immediately stops when you exit an airplane. And I never had to abandon an airplane, let her die by herself. That was a very sad event for me. But I got stable and pulled. And I'll tell you what, the standard wrap parachutes of that era, our parachutes were World War II parachutes, but had been repacked a number of times. The opening is brutal. It snaps you and takes bites out of your shoulder blades. You got big old red strawberries up there. And if you don't have the leg straps tight, you're going to talk in a high squeaky voice. But I did, but still ended up with some pretty good blood blisters in my crotch. I landed not too far from a little clearing in some low scrub. Chucked the harness and saved the ripcord and put it in my back pocket and went over towards this little clearing. Now I could hear a chopper coming my way. And as I got out to that little clearing, I could see he was going to try to land. Well, it wasn't big enough. So he stuck his tail rotor in the tree branches and showered me with a bunch of crap, and finally picked back up and dropped the sling down so I could ride the sling up into the cabin. Once in the cabin, Filipino flight mechanic handed me an orange, which is the most delicious thing I'd had in a long time, and took the nasty metallic taste out of your mouth. In the cabin, there was wounded on board. There was one across from me when I was sitting in a canvas seat with a bloody arm, and he was not having a happy day, and a puddle of vomit between his feet. But he was shaking pretty bad due to the damage to the tail rotor. So we went down on that old Japanese strip, came to a stop, and shut down. Bob Thoreau was the captain on that thing, and when he came down out of the cockpit, he said he'd called for another chopper to come for us, and he'd be there in about 10 minutes. Okay, waiting for another Air America H-34. In that elephant grass, I scooped up a Uzi, Israeli submachine gun, off the floor of the thing and hunkled down the elephant grass. Some pop had already been picked up along with my co-pilot, and we're already on the way back to Paksay in another helicopter. But as we sat there, Booma was with me, and he was kind of in shock yet, and looking at me like I'd done something wondrous. But another chopper came in and landed about 200 meters away from us. Well, we had to carry the wounded over to this chopper and ask him, what the hell do you do that for? And he said, well, you guys are supposedly in a minefield. Well, they couldn't have been very good mines. They didn't go off. But he was full with our wounded, and he left and called for another chopper to come get us. Okay. Finally, another chopper came in, H-34 of Air America, and we climbed on board. Now, the place I was dropping at was called the Plain de Boulevans, which was a high mesa like you see out west. When we got to the edge of this mesa, it dropped right down to the alluvial plain bound by the Mekong River. When we got to the edge of this plain, we ran out of gas. And we were auto-rotating down towards a little village. Didn't know if it was good guys or bad guys, but there was kids and dogs out there, so that was a pretty good indicator that it couldn't have been too evil. But as we flared to touchdown in a rice paddy near the village, one of our H-34s came out of Cambodia, and this had been converted to turbines, what we called a six-pack at that time, and an Air America chopper, and he had gun mounts on it, which was great, and that gave me the ride the rest of the way. But when I got to Paksay, I still had an Uzi in my hand, and I walked into the customer shack, and Gray Fox was there, and so was Tall Man. And when Tall Man saw me with that Uzi in my hand, he turned absolutely white. If I would have got picked up and back on that first one, I don't know. I might have done something drastic. But I'd mellowed out a little bit, and I looked at him and hit the clip release and dropped the clip to the floor and said, who's going to get the beer? And he said, I will. And he smoked out the door. Gray Fox looked at me and he says, you know, he ain't coming back. And I says, yeah, that's probably a damn good idea. And he had some in his cooler. And that was the end of my day. But as you can see in my chest, my wings were still with me. And this golden caterpillar down below is one that was given to me by the agency. Fred Brownwell made this up, and it's bigger than the one you get from the parachute company, but it's a treasure. There's only 5 of these in existence, and I don't know how many are still around anymore. Mine may be the last. But my friend and colleague, Sampop, He spent his waning days in Bangkok, Thailand with his daughter, and his daughter took excellent care of him until he died. And now I'm the only survivor. Thank you.